return.
As a coach, I can't coach energy and effort. Allow me to make an adjustment.
Why the Utah Jazz are in comparison to the 2015 Atlanta Hawks. If someone was to ask you who's going to be the best NBA team coming into 2021 season, you would probably either say the Bucks, Lakers, or the Heat. Well, so far the Heat is 9th in the East, and both the Lakers and the Bucks are 2nd in their conference. So obviously it's not any of them. As you might have already guessed, the best team right now is no one other than the Utah Jazz, who are not only leading the West, but also have the best record in the whole league. They are currently 22-5 and have won 18 out of their 19 games, which is really impressive. Surprisingly, the Jazz aren't a team with multiple MVP candidates or a bunch of superstars. Instead, they have close to 10 solid players who could get on the court and drop 20 points on any given night. That's why recently a lot of critics and NBA fans in general have started comparing them to the 2014-2015 Atlanta Hawks. For those who don't remember them or just weren't into basketball back then, the Hawks were a team with 4 All-Stars who ended the season with 60 wins and a 19-game winning streak. A solid team if you ask me. So why exactly are the Utah Jazz being compared to the old Atlanta Hawks? Well, that's what this video is about. First, we'll go over who the Hawks were and what resemblance they have to the Jazz. And at the end, we'll see if the comparison is right and whether or not the Jazz are going to end up having the same fate. Also, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe for more NBA videos. Let's get started. The year is 2015, and even though we don't talk about it nowadays, all the hype was around the Atlanta Hawks. That's what happens when you have one of your franchise's best seasons ever. They went on to not lose at all during the month of January, and because of their huge success, the Hawks ended up with 4 All-Star selections: Paul Millsap, Jeff Teague, Al Horford, and Kyle Korver. The only player on their roster who wasn't an All-Star was DeMar Carroll. The only player on their roster who wasn't an All-Star was DeMar Carroll. You probably don't know who half the guys I mentioned right now are, due to the fact that they're mostly past their prime or retired. With a record like that, they easily finished the season ranked 1st in the Eastern Conference and were looking forward to make a run at the title. I'm sure by now you're seeing the resemblance between these two teams. 1st in their conference, multiple All-Stars, franchise records are all things that these groups have in common. But here's where it gets interesting. After easily defeating the Wizards and the Nets in the finals, and I'm sure you can all guess how that ended, they ended up getting swept 4-0, which finished their historic season. Obviously, getting to do conference finals is no small feat, but for a team who was ranked top 10 both defensively and offensively, it was a bit of an underachievement. With 6 guys in double figures, this was a very balanced roster. They had some pretty solid depth, as well as specialists such as defender Thabo Sefolosha and 3-point sniper Korver. Even though there was a lot of team success, no one individually stood out enough to win any NBA awards. However, Mike Budenholzer, who was the Hawks head coach at the time, did end up winning Coach of the Year. So now that you have a deeper idea of this 2015 team, let's go over the big question, which is this team a good comparison for the 2021 Utah Jazz? Well, to answer that, first we need to look at the coaching of the two teams. Both Budenholzer and Quinn Snyder learned the main portion of their coaching from Greg Popovich, due to the fact that at some point they were both assistant coaches to him, which in a way makes both of their techniques very similar. Something that's really interesting is that Snyder was actually an assistant coach beside Budenholzer during the 2013-2014 season. So no matter how you want to look at it, there is for sure going to be similarities with the two coaches and the way they run their team. And obviously the results prove this even more. Just like the Hawks, the Utah Jazz also have a top 10 offense and defense in the league. To be more exact, they're top 5 in both ratings, which is a pretty significant upgrade. If they continue to have the same level of performance, the Jazz are also on pace to have 60+ games won. But because of the shortened season, they might not hit that milestone. No matter the number, the ratio of wins to losses are still pretty much the same between the two teams. What is the reason behind this? Well, just like the old Hawks team, the Jazz are also extremely balanced. As shocking as it may seem, they also have 6 guys averaging double figures, along with great depth off the bench. They have close to 8 players who could be starters in most other teams, which is why there are a lot of people who are saying that this Jazz team also deserves 3 or more All-Stars. Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert are both obvious options with the way that they've been playing and with the performance that Mike Conley has been putting up in his 13th season. I personally think that he easily deserves an All-Star as well. And of course, let's not forget Jordan Clarkson, who single-handedly transformed the Jazz bench and is the odds-on favorite to win 6th Man of the Year. So far, I'm sure we can all agree that all these similarities are a good thing. As much as I hate to say it, this comparison wasn't made to prove how good the Jazz are. In fact, it was the exact opposite. Remember the little story about the Hawks getting swept by the Cavs in the conference finals? Well, everything is exactly in place for the same thing to happen to Utah. LeBron James is now in the Western Conference and seems like a likely bet to make it to the conference finals again. Based on the NBA standings so far, it's really likely for the Jazz to be the ones versing Lakers in the 3rd round. That's basically why the Utah Jazz are in comparison to the 2015 Atlanta Hawks, because of how similar the two seasons are playing out. So exactly how likely is it for this to happen? Well, personally, I think there are plenty of reasons to believe that it would end up differently for the Jazz. For one, you could easily say that they are a better team than the Hawks. Now, let's not forget that most of the players on the Hawks weren't as developed or skilled as the Jazz's roster. As a group, they worked great together and could easily destroy any team in their time. However, when you look at the Hawks players individually, you wouldn't exactly see superstars. But none of these two factors are what actually sets the teams apart. What truly separates the Jazz is their defense, or more specifically, having Rudy Gobert. Yep, you've heard it right. Even though he's the most overpaid player in the league, Gobert is still the best defense player on the whole planet and can pretty much lock down most of the keys single-handedly. This would end up being a game changer for when the roster needs to get past LeBron or any other team with multiple superstars. And thinking back, a strong defensive player could possibly be what the Hawks were lacking back then. Their overall defense was good, but having a single player who could dominate on that end of the floor would change everything. After all of this, if you were to look down the rosters of these two teams, it wouldn't take more than 5 seconds for you to realize that this Jazz team is on a whole nother level. My personal takeaway is that even though these two teams have pretty much everything, this Utah team seems a lot more legit. Having both a 6th Man of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year candidate would easily put you away ahead of the 2015 Hawks. But add in everything else that was mentioned, and then you'll notice that mentioning these two teams in the same sentence is pretty much a crime. If you have a different take on this, make sure to leave a comment and tell me what you think. Also, if you haven't already, make sure to drop a like and subscribe so you can get access to these videos as soon as they're released. Well, that's pretty much it, and I'll see you next time.